Today's daf is Daf Gimel. We're continuing the discussion, the dispute between Rav and Shmuel. If when it comes to monetary things, and we have a rule, you want to extract money from someone else, you have to, the onus is on you to prove it. What's considered proving it? According to Rav, if the laws of probability corroborate what I'm saying, then that's a sufficient proof, and I can take the money out. And according to Shmuel, probability is not good enough. It has to be a vadai, has to be definitive proof. So we're bringing different rayas either way. So we're up to the Gemara here, right in the middle of the page, the Gimel Amr Aleph. In fact, let's say that this very argument between Rav and Shmuel is an argument of Tanai. What's the story there? Okay, the machlek is as follows: Tanakama and Rabach. Okay, so there was an animal that was wandering about, grazing. The nimtza shoyed hodu b'tzidei, and later when they came back to the grazing over there in the pastures, they see there's a dead animal alongside. We see that the animal, the victim, was gored, and we know that this animal that's there grazing is a wild animal, and it's an amud already. It's been already established that this animal is a gore, but nobody saw what happened. Let's say we saw that they was bitten, all bitten up, and we know that this animal was alive there, standing there next to him, continuously bites other animals. Nevertheless, we cannot turn to this animal, to the owner of the animal, say you're a mazik. We know for a fact you're a mazik and you owe money to the nizik, to the victim, the victim's owner. We don't say this is a fact. Now, over here, we're not applying the rule of roiv. What's the roiv? Here, it's applying the rule of chazak. Chazak is you have a situation and we don't know what happened, and it seems we have a chazak is, let's look at the circumstances. What does the circumstances tell us? So this animal is muhzik to be a gorer, a muhzik to bite other animals, and we see a victim there. So the chazaka tells us that this animal probably did it. But we're going to learn now that roiv and chazaka are very similar. We learn in Chulun Firal that the Gemara discusses how do you know the concept of roiv, how do you know the concept of chazaka. So sometimes, and this is why chazakas and roiv are so complicated, is because even though we use the same word chazaka for so many different cases that we had and we're going to have in different mesechtes, but every chazaka is different. Some chazakas are strong, some are weak. If you remember the temptations of Hema Beis in Bava Basra, that it discusses whether a migui versus a chazaka, which is overrides what, and then Taisus seems to tell us the different kinds of chazakas. You can't just make a universal rule. Some chazakas, that's how it is. We don't know what to do, so we say, leave things status quo. Does that mean taka is status quo? Just because yesterday was this way means today was this way? No, but we don't know what to do, so you leave things the way they are. Then you have stronger chazakas where this is like probably a stronger chazak in a way, you would think, as we'll see. You think it maybe it's a stronger chazak because the animal is known to be a vicious animal, aggressive animal, as a victim there. It's not because yesterday and we don't know what to do. There's grounds, as we'll see. So it seems that this Tanakama holds that you don't follow chazakas. And we're going to learn that the logic of chazak is very similar to the logic of roiv. What's a roiv? Probably. What does chazaka tell us? Probably. So therefore, it's very similar. And he says you don't go after, you're not going to take money out of the victim because this animal happens to be a gorer or this animal happens to be a biter. It's not good enough. Ein hochen the mammon achar chazaka, so probably ein hochen mammon achar. That's Tanakama. That was Paulo Shmuel. No, there's no roiv here.
No, the roiv is with the
What's the roiv? Yeah, but there's nothing to do with this case here. That's not the roiv here. Roiv has no. This is chazaka. That's another about this thing here. As the Rashbam adds another spanner in the work, here there's a roiv that says fakert. Most animals in the world could have done it as well. There's 1,000 cows within a mile. So just because they're not here, Anyway, Rabbi says that the Rabbi says gomol a camel ha'oiche ben ha'malim. A camel is mating, is having relations with another camel. And as Taisus points out, and actually we had a Chumash and B'Shalach, camels are very tzniusdik animals. So here, there's not even such a strong chazaka that this camel is wild, because generally when they it goes from behind, they're very tzniusdik, but the camel gets wild during mating. According to one opinion, it gets wild because if it sees others watching him, it gets all nervous because it's such a tzniusdik animal. But bottom line is, so the camels behind all these other camels trying to fertilize them. And the camel's laying on the ground. Over here, there's a shtickle chazaka that this camel does get wild during this mating. So there's a chazaka that maybe the animal did it. But you do it to the harbor. We're going to go to the owner of the camel and charge him for all these victims next year. Why? Do we know for a fact? No. But chazaka is good enough. And in a way, might be even a weaker chazaka, because generally the camel is a very sneezy animal, not so wild as anything else. So right now the Gemara thinks the principle behind Raiv and chazaka it's exactly the same thing. So the Tana Kama says we don't go after chazaka. That means you don't go after Raiv to collect money. And Rav Acha says you do go after chazaka, you go after Raiv. So that's machlekes. Rav Shmuel leima Rav domek Rav Acha, and Shmuel domek Tana Kama. Look, Rav, no, and that's a problem. So what do I need Rav Shmuel to argue about the same thing we have tonight? You don't. It's redundant. So the Gemara, no, the two arguments are totally related. That's chazaka, and this is Raiv. The Gemara explains. In fact, we have a general rule: ruba v'chazaka, ruba adif. Says the Gemara, except ain't hochamam nacharei because of cheskes moment. So the Raiv is not stronger than the chazaka. Again, there's all kinds of chazakas. Says the Gemara, I who hold that you don't go after Raiv can agree with the Tanakama, but I hold you do go after Raiv, says Rav. I hold that Raiv is sufficient. Ruba l'radya, you can get your money back by the animal, but when it comes to chazaka, you don't got the chazaka. What's the difference? Raiv is much more compelling than a chazaka, and therefore chazaka we don't go after, but Raiv will, because Raiv is stronger than chazaka. In logic, it's more cogent. It's more likely this is what happened. However, if most people buy an animal for plowing, then probably this person who came to buy the animal came to buy it for plowing. Shmuel says, now the Rashbam throws something in here, which I told you yesterday about the laws of Raiv. Big machlekes in the Rishonim Achreim. Rashbam throws in that this Raiv is a ruba de lesser kamon. And a ruba, there's two kinds of Raivs. There's a Raiv which is right in front of us, and there's a Raiv, a universal rule. So, what do you call it? A Raiv that's in front of us is weak. Why is it in front of us weak? Because the meat is in front of us. And the meat stands right in your face. It may be that this is from the meat. But when it's a universal rule, the Raiv people buy for that. It's a universal rule. Don't do with this particular. So then, the meat is not in front of us, then the Raiv becomes much stronger. In the case of the chazaka, the animal is in front of us, so therefore it's much weaker because there's also a possibility that it wasn't the animal. But and plus you have a Raiv, other animals it could have been. But in the case of Raiv, when we talk about that Hochin b'momen achar Raiv, we're talking about universal rules. Rules come on. Now, Bekiva has a big problem with that in Gilin Shas here, based on the Rashbam, just in the previous Amud, where there he seems to be saying, he gives an example when Gemara says, Hani mili bi yisuda. When do we say you go after Raiv only by Yisr? Says Shmuel, but not by Mammon. Says the Rashbam, what's an example of Yisr? The case we had included up says, well, you have 9 stores selling kosher meat and 1 store selling trade meat, you go after the Raiv. Right? But if you find in the street, Raiv. So what's the example he gives of the Raiv that we're talking about here? And you contrast that with Mammon. And that's Ruba the Isa Kamon. There's 9 stores in front of you. But there's a safer store in front of you also. And yet that's the contrast, which means, according to the Rashbam there's no difference between the Raiv that's in front of us and the Raiv that's in front of us. It's all the same. And the Kibbutz remains a Tzorchi. Because there is a machlekes, which is stronger. Ruba the Isa Kamon. Others, Davka argue, Isa Kamon is stronger because it's right in front of you. The Raiv is in front of you. It's not Stam Level Terrain. Right here, you have 9 stores selling kosher. Anyway, that's that. So Raiv is different than Chazaka, and the Rashbam is not just Stam Raiv, but because it's a Ruba the Isa Kamon. However, Shmuel says, I can hold, I said that, but you don't go after Raiv. I can agree with Rav Acha, but you will go after Chazaka. In this case, the Chazaka is stronger. Why? This very animal, but that's not a universal rule. This animal is a muhzik to be a gorer. This animal is a muhzik to be biting. It's right in front of us. So that's a very strong Chazaka. So Acha therefore says, probably this animal did it. But Stam, or Raiv, and maybe a Ruba D'Lasa Kaman, we don't follow. So it could be according to Shmuel, a Ruba D'Isa Kaman is stronger than Ruba D'Lasa Kaman. In fact, the Rashbam before was talking in Shmuel. When the Rashbam says Hanimi Basuna of Moinallah is Shmuel. And maybe there's no still in the Rashbam who can answer the Kiv Eger. But here Shmuel himself is saying that a Ruba the lesser Kaman is not as strong as a Chazaka the Isa Kaman. The Chazaka, the animal, is right in front of us. He said, "Oh, Abach is saying, I agree, Stam a universal rule. We're not going to take money away from you, but a Chazaka that's in front of us and moves the Begufe, we will take away." So we see that Shmuel, maybe the difference is not Chazaka versus Roiv, but rather Isa Kaman versus lesser Kaman, and Shmuel holds exactly the opposite of Rav. And he holds that a Roiv that's in front of us is very strong, just like a Chazaka. It's a Roiv that's a universal rule that's not strong. And that's why, yeah, but maybe not. So Shmuel holds that all raves do not take money out. Makes no difference. Isa come on, lesser come on, and the word is chazaka versus rave. So you have to work it through what the Rashbam is saying. Yeah, of course. If they're all in the same barn, let's say, yeah. They said further. Okay, so we have no proof one way or another. Somebody sells fruits to his friend. We had in our Mishnah. So this is why we're bringing this whole Gemara here, going back to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah clearly holds, like Shmuel, that ain't hochem amanacharev. Remember, she says if you sell them seeds that generally people use for planting, but some people use for eating, and you say, hey, I planted and was useless, you don't get your money back. Ain't how am I right? But if let's say I gave you zaray and egina, I gave you seeds that can only be used to plant, and it didn't work, I can get my money back. So clearly, what's the difference? The difference is that this is merely a roiv, but some people buy for other things. So we see clearly the Mishnah ain't hochem amanacharev. She's back like Shmuel. That's the most question. It says, some didn't grow. I feel there's other pishtan, even flax, which roiv people buy flaxseed in order to plant. But some people use it for other things, for eating, for maybe medicine. Maya filu. What do you mean afilu? Allah afilu zora pishtan. The rubel is riyazam. This is what Mishnah is saying. That even though you planted it, that even pishtan, where most people, the majority of people, when they buy pishtan, they buy it to planting. You don't go after Raiv. Clearly that what? Like Shmuel, that the Raiv is not good enough. He can say, I thought you're from the meat, I want to eat it. So what are you right? Clear that our Mishnah doesn't agree, but Tanai, it's a machlekes Tanai. The Tanya we learned, somebody's a friend, paid his friend, and he planted, but like something didn't grow. Zaraine Gina and Zaraine Gina She'ena Cholin. So now the Bryce explains, if it was Zaraine Gina seeds from a garden that nobody uses other than planting, then Chai Bachrusan. You sold him a dud. Zara Pishton ain't a Chai Bachrusan. The Tanakhama said, but if you planted flax, Chai Bachrusan, because I said, okay, Roiv Taka use it for planting, but some people use it for eating. And ain't hochem amanacharev. Yes, Tanakama like our Mishnah. Rabbi Yesi disagrees. He says, "Noisen leidmei zera." Rabbi Yesi says that what we do after Rav, and since Rav people use it for planting and it didn't work, you have to reimburse him. In other words, hochem b'mama nachar Rav. Amrulai. So the Chachamim come along and say, "Harbe loichin oistud var machem." This is very interesting. When we say Rav, I think more explain in a minute. Do we look at the Rav people who walk in the store to buy, or we look at the Rav seeds that are sold? Majority of the people who buy seeds buy it for planting. No, sorry. Majority of the seeds that are sold for planting. Because when you plant, you buy thousands of seeds. You don't buy one or two or three, you buy big numbers. But majority of the people that walk in, they buy it for either medicine, flax seeds supposed to be some kind has medicinal purposes, or for eating. So when we say Rav, let's say that I want to say to Rabbi Yasi, we agree that holchim b'mama nacharei. They agree with that principle. But what's the rave here? The rave, sorry? That's a question.
But the argument, the person's finding, it's not so much about how much it's finding.
Yeah.
We want to know what was the person thinking when he came to buy. Was he planting it? Was he thinking
yeah, true, but that's one way of looking. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is the majority of the seeds are sold for what do you call it? For planting, and therefore go after the ripe. We don't look at the person; we look at the commodity. So Omro, they told him, if you look at the focus on the people, there are many people here who buy it for other things, and therefore he can. So there's like one person, let's say, buys a certain amount for planting. There's 100 people that buy small amounts for eating, for medicine. So Abiyasi says you look at the majority of the seeds, it's for planting and it doesn't work, got to give him his money back. The Chacham say we agree with you in principle, you look at majority, but which majority? Majority of people, they don't use it for planting. The majority of people come in for other things, and therefore you don't have to reimburse it. So Gemara says, man tanoi. So you just said to machlekes tanoim, one holds like that, one holds like small. Who exactly is this tanoi? You tell me that's a machlekes Abiyasi Amaloi. They both agree that you go after the Roy. The question is only who. You focus on the people. You look at the seeds. Elo, you can learn either Tanakama or Abiyasi. Tanakama clearly says, Ein Hochim and Abiyasi says you do. Or Tanakama and the Amrullah, the Tanakama says you don't look after, Ein Hochim and Amrullah agree, you do go after the Roy. The question is on which Roy. Okay, so we have no raya. Okay, so we have two opinions. What I learned? Mahu Naisan Loi. Now this is very interesting. Okay, let's say you have to reimburse. Zaroin Agina. You gave him, it was a dud, it didn't work. I sold him something that was useless. I have to reimburse him. But the problem is, I bought the seeds from you. I hired a worker to come in and to till my soil and to go ahead and plant the seeds. Paid him a day's salaries. I had to buy some other petrol for my machine and everything else, and the whole thing was a dud. Can I claim from you not only the money of the seeds that you sold me, which is useless, but all my expenses that are incurred because of you? So the Gemara says, I can only charge you for the money of the seeds and nothing more than that. The Yeshayim and the Yeshayim say also Haitzah. On what basis Haitzah? This is purely Grama, and Grama Zik is potted. The Rashbam says it's a knas. It's a knas. Others argue it's mamash garmi. We'll see later. Mom makes a different garmi grama. And garmi gufa. Why the halacha remeir? Because of knas. And they want to argue the Rashbam when he says knas, he means garmi, but that's great. Anyway, man yeshem. Who does Hashem? Taisus lays down a rule and bring you to Taisus always down because we have in the end of Hodesh we learned the punishment that gave it tonight. This is Yashayim, Achedim, and Achedim is always Abnas. As Yeshayim is always Abnas. Achedim is Abmeir. So what's the question, man? Yeshayim? It's Abnas. And Taisus said, but sometimes we say Yeshayim, it doesn't mean Abnasan, right here. Others want to say it depends. It was before Abnasan was chastised and became, they tried to embarrass the Talabud. Before he became, and before then, Yeshayim meant somebody else. And the same with Ameir. And Ameir, sometimes you find in Brises, you have Ameir's opinion, and then you have Achedim. We'll have Sanhedrin or other places. There's Ameir and Achedim. So there's, I can't remember who said this. I think one was Shani. He wants to say, what Pshat Ameir is called Achedim? Whenever Ameir is quoting Elisha ben Avua, who is called Acher, they don't want to give it a Meir, what they call him Achedim. So you can have a Meir and Achedim, and both are Meir. This is his opinion, and that's Achedim's opinion. And my father always used to say, my father was a real lateral thinker. So anyway, it says in the Pigyav, it's Ezel Chacham Aleim Mikolad, right? So my father used to say, it's not a statement, it's a question mark. Don't say it's a Chacham, you keep on repeating other people's words. It has to be your own. Whatever it is, you have to understand yourself. Yeah, he just says, he repeats this guy and that guy, the tape recorder. So you have a mayor's own opinion, and then you have a mayor quoting Achid. Anyway, says, you know who the Yeshayim is? Rashbag. It's Rashbag. The Gemara Hayr of Shingul, which Rashbag? What's the Mishnah? If you remember, we had a Tanakama, the case in the Mishnah, he talks about the things that even Roy people use it for planting, but me, it use it for eating. And then the Rashbag comes along and says, but it's Arayna things which is 100% only for planting, you have to reimburse it. And what do you think Tanakama holds? The Tanakama holds the same thing. Tanakama just says, where Roiv people use for planting, you don't have to reimburse it. But if 100% of the people use this for planting, then of course, if it doesn't work, you have to reimburse them. So what's the machleket Tanakama Rashbag? So the Gemara says, you have no breda, but to say, they're arguing about this very nekuda. Do you pay for the extra expenses as well? So Rashbag is adding a layer to the Tanakama. Now, I'm going the same thing. Only if you plant flax, because some people use it for food. Excuse me. But the then you which is 100% used for planting. then what do you call it? You have to reimburse it if it doesn't work. So what's the machlekes? Elalav hoitza. The chilik is that very point. Who said? Okay, let's say you're right, but how do you know which one says what? Maybe it's the other way around. Tanakam is the one who says you pay for expenses. The Rishbag says you're only limited to pay for the seats. That's not a problem. Call Tanabasa Litfuyi Milsakasi. Generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, the second opinion always adds to the first opinion, not reduces. Unless he clearly says, when it comes to qualify. That's the Gemara. So you're coming along and making a chiddush where there's no allusion to in the Mishnah, a whole big chiddush, because you have no choice. You say, you know what? Is also going to charge you for all the expenses that you incur. That's a big chiddush. I have another way of learning, even though it's a chiddush, but it's a much less a chiddush, which we do quite often. The dilma kula rashbagi. Maybe in the time Mishnah rashbag, a few words are missing. If a hachik tani, instead of making your big chiddush that you pay for expenses, I'll say, you know what? The whole Mishnah time Mishnah shimon gamlil. So it's not Tanakam rashbag arguing, and this is how you're supposed to learn Mishnah. Even if the majority of people use it for planting, you're not chayib responsible. Skip the parentheses. These are the words of the Rashbag. That's part Mishnah in the Mishnah. Because the Rashbag says the only time that you have to reimburse is I'd rather learn the Mishnah that way, and you have no proof that you have to pay for expenses. So the Gemara. And in fact, generally we have a rule we pass on the Rashbag, but over here we don't, because we turned the Mishnah around that there's no hachsas. Now, if we learn this way the Mishnah, then there's no opinion that says you have to also pay for the expenses. So which Rashbag are you talking about? That you pay for expenses? The time you learn, if somebody takes wheat to a professional miller to go ahead and grind his wheat with lots, and the way you're supposed to grind wheat is they give you the stalks, you put it into hot water so you can remove the husks, and then you put the actual wheat into the machine and you break it down and you get good flour out of it. But if you leave the husks in there, then you have very coarse flour. You have the sholachs, you have the peel, everything in there. So what happened was, he forgot, he didn't do it right. He didn't put it in hot water. But also subit. So now you have bran, or mursen, you have the piece in it. Another case, kemach, he brought flour lenachtun, but off a pasta pull. He's supposed to bake nice bread. Instead, he brought bread that falls apart in your hand. Or he brought a behema l'tabach, he brought a behema to a yatka, to a slaughterhouse, to a sheikh the shechta, to benivla, and they messed up. The din is chayiv v'pneisha who can noisa sacher. He's chayiv because he's like he was paid for it. So the Taisus and his mom and all the trying to bring the mother we already had in Bava Kama. That is, it depends if you perform a professional. If you paid him or he does you a favor. If you paid a professional and he destroys it, then he's responsible. If you didn't pay him, he's like a shemechinam, and he's potter. But only if he's a professional. So we say it wasn't negative. If he wasn't a professional, then we'll say it's karel l'pshia, because he shouldn't have done it in the first place, taking it upon himself. Unless he told you clearly, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm taking a chance. Rashbag says, so what does Rashbag say? Noisla, you have to pay him. Now, he invited all these people for having a Shul Shabbos, all these challahs. He has no challah to give them, so he's all embarrassed. The guests are embarrassed. Why are the guests embarrassed? Is a little bit hard to understand. What are they embarrassed about? Unless they're embarrassed for him. They feel bad for him that he's embarrassed for them. So pay them all out. But this is, in halach, it's very hard to understand exactly this opinion, because there's no monetary loss here. It's boishas. But we learn clearly in the law in Bava Kama that boishas is different than all other payments. If a guy falls off a roof and he does something to whatever, so including boishas, you don't pay boishas. Why? Because boishas is different. Actually, yiskaven. But the only time you chai for boishas is if you intended to embarrass someone. Nobody intended to embarrass anybody. So where's the payment come in? Unless this is some kind of a knas. You'll have to say it's a kind of knas that, be more careful with what you're doing. Talking about boishas, so along those lines, minig godlish lines, a beautiful minig in Yerushalayim has some kindness. There was a beautiful minig in Yerushalayim, and that is the hamoiser suud lechaveri. Sorry, I meant the next minig. So the minig in Yerushalayim is a minig godl. This is a big minig in Yerushalayim. That if somebody, let's say, provides a meal for his friend, and vikukla, he cooked whatever it is, he messed up the whole meal. Noisenly not only reverses the money, whatever is for the meal, but the beibosh is archa. Dafkin Shalaim that had this minig. Minig God was not minig Shalaim. Mape prusa gabi pesach. So my boishes, so they're not embarrassed. They are malai. The poor people, They would have in front of the door, they would put out like a flag or a big mappa tablecloth or something. Al gabe Pesach, a hint that now I'm eating lunch, I'm eating breakfast, dinner. If anybody's hungry, come and join me. Kozman shemappa prusa and they're not going to embarrass him because he put it out there. Obviously, he has extra food. Nistalka mappa. Once that mappa is removed, ain't they don't come in anymore. So this way nobody's embarrassed, and this is along the lines of embarrassment. And again, Dafka Shalayim, because the Shalayim seems to make a big focus about not embarrassing the guest. Said the Mishnah. If I sell fruits to my friend, had a couple of, you know that included in the fruits are going to be some other things. For example, Reiva Tenefis Lasa. Remember, a saw, the measure of a saw, has in it 6 kavim, and every kav has like 4 loyim, right? So there's 24th of a saw. You know that included in my wheat is going to be a roiva, and we think right now it means dirt and rocks and pebbles. And you're meichlet. That means you're not getting 100% of wheat. You're accepting 96% roughly of wheat. And that's normal. When it comes to figs, when a person buys figs, he doesn't expect 100% to be beautiful, fresh figs. In Mekabel Olav, Esem Metulois Lameh, you're prepared to accept 10%, and that's how you pay. So it's and you're meichel. What happens if it's more than 10%? The Gemara will talk about it tomorrow. Marativ Shel Yain, I sell you a cellar of wine. And then Gemara later will talk about exactly what I told you when I sold it to you. Mikabel Olav Ese Kutzes Lameh, you expect 10 barrels of lousy wine bordering on becoming vinegar. So these are all bordering. Kankanim b'sharim. I sell you barrels in a place called Sharon. There's an area in Etzisrael, right in the middle of Etzisrael, and they're very famous for their barrels. In Mikabel Olav Ese Pitzes Lameh, you expect out of every 100, 10 barrels to be very weak. Still, you could use it for something. It's patched up or something. If it has no use, then I bought 100, not 90. So it still has a use, but not for long term.